with all this stupid stuff that I do.
Are you gonna be on video, Vasudha?
No, I am not.
Okay, then just, okay, it's my full screen.
Okay, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's start then. So what is information processing? Information processing is a source of learning. That means you're obtaining information. But until unless it is organized and processed and available to the right kind of people in a format which is comfortable for decision making, it is going to be a burden and it is not a benefit, says William Pollard. Now, let's look at the models of information processing. Before we go ahead, there are certain things that we need to look into during the entire chapter. So we're going to define information processing, discuss the various models of information processing, explain the levels of recall, and describe the levels of processing. And these are our objectives for today. Now, before we go into the rest of it, apart from the definition that I've given ahead, information is the facts that are obtained or learned about someone or something. And information processing is the flow of this particular information through the human nervous system, which includes the operation of perceptual systems, memory stores, decision processes, and response mechanisms. So basically, this is the path that information takes in order to move from our stimulus, sorry, what is that, stimuli receptors or sensory receptors to the long-term memory. And in order to learn further about the ways that we remember stuff, we will move on to the Vog and Norman's primary and secondary memory. Now, this was the first ever modern behavioral model that was proposed by, as you guessed it, Vog and Norman. And it was proposed in the year 1965, that is 1965. Vog and Norman stated that the theory was dualistic in nature. That means it has two parts. One is the primary memory or the short-term memory, the secondary memory or the long-term memory. And they also borrowed heavily from the dichotomy of primary and secondary memory, which was proposed by this person called William James. And in this theory, that is William James's theory, stated that you have to look at memory like boxes inside your head. So now you see this picture, right? Where there's shelves and boxes. Consider each of those boxes as your memories that are present inside your brain. And Vog and Norman was able to do something that William James couldn't do. That is, define the properties of primary and primary memory. They stated that the short-term memory, as its namesake, is limited in storage capacity. And they also stated that the old data that was there in the short-term memory was would either decay or be replaced by new information. Now, they conducted an experiment in order to track the primary memory or take the path that was taken by primary memory. And they did this because they wanted to find out if forgetting was a function of decay or interference. And in order to do so, they took up a list of 16 digits and recited it at two different paces. The first pace was 1 digit per second, and the other was 4 digits per second. And they did this in order to find if it was because of decay or interference. And if they found that it was the forgetting was part of decay or was a function of decay, they saw that there was lesser recall when the rate of recitation was slower. So when 1 digit per second was given, the recall was slower. But if if forgetting was a part of interference or a function of interference, it was seen that no matter how fast or how slow you go when you're reciting the digits, the recall was similar all throughout. it was also stated by Wog and Norman that in order to recall the same information after a duration of time or after a certain duration of time, one must rehearse it and repeat it in order to move it from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. Guys, can you give me 1 second? Just a second. Okay, let's go back. And this was the explanation given by Wog and Norman. That means that repeating information will better store it in the long-term memory. After this, Atkinson and Shiffrin came up with their stage model. And if you look at the picture that is drawn, or whatever I drew randomly, it states that the information or in this model, memory begins with the stimulus that is received from the environment. Stimulus here is the sight, the smell, the taste, the audio, whatever you touch and feel. Now, sensory receptors convert this environmental stimuli into sensory inputs. And these sensory inputs are then stored in the sensory memory and can be held there for a couple of seconds in the sensory registers. Any unimportant information at this point of time is forgotten, and after which initial processing is done. After the initial processing also, only important information is moved on to the short-term memory, and information from there is repeated in the short-term memory so that it is transferred from the long-term memory to the, from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. If there is no rehearsal done, and then the data that is there in the short-term memory is forgotten. Now, to move the information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory, elaboration and encoding is done in order to store the information permanently. Okay, so when you want to recall the information or give a response to a question that I ask or someone asks, then the response is given by retrieving the information from the long-term memory through the short-term memory. And apart from this, there are many ways that will facilitate and ensure the transfer of the information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. Attention and atomicity. Sorry, automaticity. Now, automaticity is the just a minute. Now, automaticity is the ability to do things without occupying the mind with the low level details that is required. Now, if you are a pro at cooking, for example, you wouldn't exactly put your mind on thinking as to how much salt I should put into something or how much sugar I should put into a coffee. You'll automatically do it. It becomes a habit. So this is called automaticity. Now, these majorly influence your sensory memory. And apart from this, each of your memory unit or structure represented in the head. That means every memory is represented in your head with something. Now, this representation is distinct, and these units of memory serve different operational functions. Apart from that, there is an evidence of some special types of categorization systems that are there in the human mind. Guys, kindly mute yourselves. A guy named, thank you so much, a guy named Brunner came up stating that perseveration, conceptualization, learning, and decision making are all parts of categorization or categorizing. That means whatever mental process you do in order to receive information or understand it is a part of categorizing. Just a second, Daddy. Thank you so much. Sorry for that. And next we move on to recall. Now, what is the levels of recall? Remember the experiment we did, which is the effect of cueing on recall? This is something similar to that. This is the basis of that experiment, or you could say so. Now, this experiment was done by a Russian psychologist by the name P.I. Zinkhenko in the year 1962 and 1981. This was done in order to find out how subjects, that is us, interacted to the material that needed to be learned and kept in our brains or committed to our memories, which means all this information that we're learning about psychology and all that, he wanted to see how we reacted to it, or we how we interacted with the materials, as in how we try to remember it. And it was found that the words which had deeper meaning to them were better remembered and than those words which did not make any sense. So nonsense syllables were easily forgotten and words with meaning were more easily remembered. He also found out that recall of concrete relationship words, that is, words that had more connections between them, were better remembered with than the words which had no connections. Like for the example, in the second part of effect of queuing on recall, in the queued recall list, if you remember, you most of us had actually recalled more names than we did in the first list. The first list was random, there was no connection between them. But in the second one, there was connection that was formed in between the words, that is by grouping, and hence we were able to recall better. Now that was the level of recall. Then came Craig and Lockhart with the levels of processing in the year 1972. Now, the names of these people are Fergus Craig and Robert Lockhart. And their theory stated that some types of information are more easily remembered by people, and the amount that is remembered by them depends on how the coding is done into the memory. That is, how we encode the information that we receive into our memory. It also influences how much we remember. And there are three levels of this processing: visual processing or structural processing, uh, phonemic processing or auditory processing, and semantic processing. So visual processing is the lowest form of processing, which means not much processing is done. That is why it mainly concerns itself with the appearance of an object or structural features. Now, if you guys can see the list that is there right beside, can any of you tell me the the words that are all in capitals?
All
Guys?
are capitals.
Yeah, all
Chocolate,
capitals.
cream,
Okay,
pie.
chocolate. Right.
Do you see that? So what you're
Yes.
trying to do is not actually understand what chocolate, caramel, cream, enchiladas are. You're just seeing that these words have capital letters all in them. So you're looking at the structure or the physical feature of these words, not the meaning. And this kind of processing is known as maintenance rehearsal. Now, maintenance rehearsal is the type of is where the information that is received is held in the memory without elaboration. That means once I asked you for all the capital lettered words, you're not going to see look at chocolate and say, oh no, it comes from cocoa plant and all that. No, you'll just look at the word chocolate and say it is all in capitals, and that's it. That is the lowest form of processing. And unfortunately, it leads to fragile memory traces, which means that it tends to be usually forgotten. Now, what are memory traces? Memory traces is also known as engram, by the way, are theoretical means by which memories are physically stored in your brain. That means if you look at the map of your house, most of you, by the time you're reaching your house or you're close to your house, when you close your eyes and try to visualize the space, that is when you take a mental picture of the place, you'll know which speed breaker is where. So this is the uh, trace that you have of your house. Now imagine the memory as this house that you're staying in, and the route which you're taking to go to that memory is your trace. And what all this processing in the end leads to fairly short term memory. Sorry for writing story. I don't know why I didn't correct it. Okay. Next, we go on to phonemic or auditory processing. This is the second type of processing, and we use our ears in this. Now, this is mainly concerned with appearance and sound. Now, when I say appearance, it is mostly visual, right? Why am I using the word appearance in auditory processing? Most of you might get this doubt. So when you close your eyes and you say you hear certain sounds like barking or thunder, like and all that, you tend to associate that sound with the picture. So if you hear Scooby barking, that is my dog barking, you will think of a dog that is barking, or if you close your eyes, you can actually visualize a dog that is barking. Now that is where appearance comes into mind. And after, this is an intermediate form of processing, which means this kind of information or this kind of information that is processed tends to stay for a little longer than your visual processing. That means if your visual processing is mostly forgotten after within a span of 1 or 2 seconds, your auditory processing mostly remains for about say 5 seconds. This way, a higher rate of recall is done when compared to your visual processing. That means when you hear to words rather than see a object, you tend to remember a little more. Now, third comes the best out of all these three, that is the semantic processing. Now, semantic processing is generally language oriented or meaning oriented. It concerns itself with the meaning of the word. So whatever meaning you remember to a word, you generally tend to remember them for a longer period of time. This kind of processing involves elaborate rehearsal. Now, elaborate rehearsal is an encoding strategy that is used to facilitate the formation of memory. And how is it done? By linking whatever new information you're getting to the information that you already have in your brain. That means whatever information I'm giving you now, it might be already there in your brain with a different format or in a different format. So whatever I'm giving you now, you'll take that and put a link between whatever you already know and learned and whatever information I'm giving you. So this connection that is formed between the new and the old information helps in retaining the information for a longer duration of time. So this has a more meaningful analysis, or in this process, a more meaningful analysis is done in which the information to the information that is received. Now, this leads to a more durable memory trace. So you actually remember where your memory is, so you can go pick it up immediately or very precisely. This also results in a very high rate of recall. Apart, these are the levels of processing. Now there's another feature that you can do, or another thing that you can do to remember information better. Do you see how this guy is asking how whatever the lady is saying, how it relates to me? Now that is called your self-reference effect. When you try to link the information that you're receiving to yourself, it forms a deeper connection between your mind and the information. So that actually, again, makes a better memory trace, which in fact helps in remembering things better. So if suppose say you're going through social psychology notes or your um, lifespan psychology notes, you go through a process or you read something and you say, oh, this has happened to me. I remember this better because this has happened to me, or this is related to me. That is a self-reference effect. Now, this self-reference effect was proposed by Rogers, Culper, and Kirker in the year 1977. Sorry for that. It is a process of relating information to oneself, and this encourages deeper processing and causes one to retain more information. In a study that was conducted by Craig and Tulving, it was found that the words which had more deeper or which were more deeply encoded were better recalled than the words that were shallow, where shallow encoding was done. That means it again goes back to the level of processing. In the level of processing, your shallow encoding was your visual and your auditory encoding. But your deeply encoded material was your semantically encoded material. So they're definitely referencing back to it. Now, there is one term that you come across over and over again in your entire of your cognitive psychology. It is called schema. Now, what does schema mean? It is every piece of information that you have that is present in your brain. It includes all the experiences that you had, everything that you've learned, and everything that you've witnessed. So every event that has happened in your life is a schema. Now, schema is also a framework by which we can take in information and we can organize it and understand it better. It helps organize our thoughts. And Seema, if you're there, this is your grandfather who has coined it, Jean Piaget.
Yes,
And
yes.
and
I didn't like the
considering
grandfather word.
yeah, so coming back, these schemas can be thought of as building blocks. You can use that to build take in more information and develop on it. Unfortunately, these schemas are also the items that influence the stereotypes and prejudice that a person has. So if once you say just an example, no offense to anyone, if you talk about a Tamilian and his love for sambar, that is a stereotype. Not every Tamilian actually likes sambar. God knows if this is true or not, but this is just an example. And you go say, oh, you like sambar, no, to a Tamilian, he might get offended. So that stereotype is also because of schema, because somewhere, someday, someone has told you that all Tamilians like sambar. And that was the first time you're listening to it. And apart from this, schema play a very important role in the learning process. Uh, schemas influence what we pay attention to, impact how quickly we learn. How quickly a person learns. It helps simplify the world around us. That means it helps us in easily understanding the world around us. It also allows people to think very quickly and can also change how we interpret information that is coming towards us. Schemas are very difficult to change. Unfortunately, schemas take a lot of patience to change. So once you are stereotyping a person, or you have or someone has the bad habit of stereotyping everything, in order to change that person's way of thinking, it will take a longer period of time, and it is very difficult to get it out. Now, you say someone is set in their ways. If you look at our grandparents and all that, they're very set in their ways. They're like, no, you have to. They're stubborn, and they're like, no, you have to do it this way. It has to be this way. That is all due to schema. But one ray of hope is you can change a schema in a person, but it is a very inclusive and an extensive process. Apart from which, there are five types of schema apart from the self schema: object schema, social schema, person schema, role schema, and trait schema. Now, object schema is all the information you have about a particular object. Social schema is all the information and the rules that you have about interacting in a society. Person schema is the information about how you interact with another person. Role schema is all your job descriptions, the information of all the job descriptions and job the roles and the things that you have with your jobs. Trait schema is about traits. It is all the information that you have about traits and personalities. Now, self schema. I mentioned about self schema. Now, self schema is the belief and idea about ourselves. Now, this is modified by a person's experience or their own life experience, which reflect in our values and interests. So, our values and interests reflect what we have experienced, and these modify or control our beliefs and ideas. Self schema generates motivation to change one from the present self to a better self. This is the positive side of self schema. But again, there's a negative side of self schema. If a person starts to think, I am the best self already, if they think that there is nothing better than what they are currently, then there is no chance of schema motivating them to feel or to do better, right? Then it goes into the negative self schema role. Self schema is an organized system of internal attributes that are constellated around the topic of I, me, myself. Suppose say I'm talking about some random person, suppose say XYZ, and I'm saying this person is very kind, they're very sweet, they're very humble, they're very intelligent and all that. And you think, oh, this person is talking about me, or all these are my traits, it must be myself only. This is the narcissistic trait. That means you're thinking about yourself, you're putting yourself with the characteristics that I've told you, and this helps in understanding. See, now I'm not talking about just the traits that I'm talking about. So if you're able to link the information that I have given you with yourself, or you're relating yourself with the information, then it forms a deeper connection, is what the self-reference effect talks about. Schema and self-schema are building blocks or units to help you get to where you have to remember the information, or they help you remember that information. After this, we come to the last and final of your
Vasudha, just a second,
yes.
Vasudha. You just
Sure,
talked
sure.
of schemas, right? So
Yes.
this is a very important concept, and we will talk about it a little bit more in lifespan also, where we
Yes.
are going to be talking about assimilation and accommodation, or how it exactly happens. Just to take a very small example, when a baby, I said this earlier also, when a baby looks at a four-legged animal, okay, it calls it something, some random thing, baba or something. So mummy is going to say, this is not baba, this is a dog, right? So assimilation happens in a schema which says that, okay, this is a dog. Later on, he goes and sees a cat or a horse or something else, and he calls that also a dog. Then the mother says, no, no, this is not a doggy, this is a horse. So now, whatever was pre-existing knowledge in his schema changes and says, okay, so now there are two types. So that is called accommodation. Now he's accommodating another new concept. So it's a very important concept. Please keep this in mind. I thought I'll just add it. Okay,
No, thank you so much, Seema. That was excellent. Thank you. That was well needed also. See, granddaughter speaking about schema herself.
Wanted to give you a break also a little.
Not a
And
problem at all.
they
This is last topic.
named her after schema also. Seema.
Yes, Sunita, you are
Right.
there. All right.
Good one.
Now let's move on, please. Let's finish this and we can open up for questions, I guess. Now the last and final part of your levels of processing and information processing, models of information processing, is your connectionist model of memory. It is also known as the parallel distributed processing. It was proposed by David Rumelhart and James McClellan. Now, according to them, memory exists in networks, and new experiences can alter this network as well as change one's knowledge. What they say is there's a network inside of our head. Memories do not, okay, memories exist in these networks. That means connection between certain units, and new experiences can alter this network as well as change the knowledge. So whatever information you're getting or whatever experiences you're facing and all that, change the way you look at another aspect of your life. Now, parallel processing is the brain's ability to make sense of several different incoming stimuli at the same time. Now, suppose say you're driving a car and you're looking at a certain sign. you don't look at the shape of the sign differently. You don't look at the color of the sign differently or the symbol on the sign differently. It all happens together. But in the back of your mind, all of them are taken differently, but they're put together and then given to you. So whatever information your stimulus that you're getting from that sign that you're seeing is all parallelly processed. So the color is differently processed. At the same time, the symbol is differently processed. At the same time, the shape of the board itself is differently processed, but all of it comes together. Again, the PDP model assumes that the mental process takes place through a system of highly interconnected units. As we saw, memory is interconnected, right? A network is interconnected units. Now, they say the same thing. The model assumes that the mental processes take place through a system of highly interconnected units. It also states that these units communicate with each other. So it is also said that excitatory or inhibitory signs or signals are sent between each of the units. Now, what is a unit? A unit are simple processing elements. Okay, so each memory can be called as a unit, or each thought can be called as a unit. Now, the larger the number of connections between these units, the longer the information is retained. That means more the number of connections, better the bond or better the information is retained. Now, PDP model has three basic principles. They are the representation of the information. Sorry, the three principles are that the representation of the information is distributed. That means information is not all collected into a same place. They're in different spots. Memory and knowledge for specific things are not stored explicitly. As I said, all the information is not at one particular point. However, they're stored in the connection between two units. Okay, I hope you got it. Then the last basic principle is that learning can occur with gradual change in connection strength by experience. So these, suppose say there are connections, right? Suppose say you are putting a charging point, sorry, you're charging your phone. So now that is a connection between your phone and the electricity. Now this kind of a connection, it can change, or the strength can change with experience. Now, what is the experience for the phone? Because of the connection, if the company changes, the company of the charger changes, the phone receives the charging at a slower rate. This is just an example again. Okay, let's move on. Now, the PDP model, to further simplify it, the PDP model holds that the cognitive processes can be explained by activation flowing through networks that link together nodes. What are nodes? Nodes are single point or units. They typically represent a single concept or a feature and is connected to another node. If you look at this, the picture below, it says robin, bird, flamingo, roadrunner, platypus, parrot, crocodile, mammals, elephants, and all this. Now, all these are interconnected. Now, what are the birds? Can someone tell me all the names of the birds that are there? Guys, hello?
Parrot, flamingo.
Robin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Play,
All of you are awake.
is also a part
Road
of-
runner.
Okay. Now, there is one thing that the mammals do. What is it? Lay eggs? No, they don't. Okay. Now, fine. You guys are awake actually. But there are mammals as well here, right? Remember the roadrunner, the platypus, the crocodile, the squirrel, elephant. These are all mammals. But there are connections between the birds and the mammals. What are the connections? The platypus and the roadrunner. Now, a platypus is a bird and an and a mammal put together, or a roadrunner as well. Now, what does that mean is, the platypus is in the form of a bird, but it still gives birth to a baby and it does not lay eggs. However, it says that a crocodile does lay eggs. Now, these are the connections between the different informations that we have. And whatever information we have is strengthened by new information that is put together. So what I know till now is a crocodile is a mammal, basically a reptile, but it lays eggs. It does not give birth to babies. That is what I newly know. Now, this information latches on to the information that I already have, makes a stronger connection, and is more retained in my brain. Now, that is what the PDP does. A PDP, again, is a cognitive theory that concerns itself with the connections or with connecting nodes and pathways within the brain. Apart from this, I'll give you another example. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you think I'm awesome.
I haven't done. I'm not finished.
Yeah, but I acknowledge your appreciation.
Thank you. Hey, you guys are awesome. Just a minute. Now, suppose say where is it? What? Can everybody see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Yes.
Why is it not writing? There you are. So let's say there are certain nodes. Okay. You're in a classroom. Okay. Now the teacher tells you about greetings and personal information, how to greet a person, and the personal information is connected in such a way. Okay. Next, in the next class, she teaches you how to ask a person for more details in their life. And then she asks you to combine the first thing, that is the greetings and personal information, into finding a what do you say, or making a new appointment, or trying to arrange for another appointment, and also learns how to say goodbye. Okay. And then the last and final thing, she asks you to practice all this language, and then all these scribblings that I've made. Do you see the most thickest scribbling, guys?
Yes.
Yes,
You see
Vasudha.
this?
Yes.
This means that amongst all the information that you've received, you have a certain point where between two nodes, the connection is the strongest, because you're going over and over it again and again, due to which the information that is there within the red circle is saved in your brain at a much better rate, and it is there almost permanently. And this is your connectionist theory. I hope all of you were able to understand.
Yes, Vasudha, thank you so much. I have another example, during exam, I think the connection of people become more stronger with each other, even though we don't know each other.
Yes, that is because you're
Just for
constantly
copy.
communicating. Yes. Again,
Right.
taking Ritu's point, connectionist theory does not only apply for memory. What I believe is, if you're in constant contact with someone, you have a connection with them on a regular basis, you tend to have a stronger bond, and you tend to be with them for a longer duration of time.
Right now, whatever is happening, all of us are there in a class, right? So we tend to know each other, though there are hundreds of people in the psychology first year, but we won't know everybody else, like how this group knows each other.
Exactly.
Also, there's a theory called interpersonal attraction. I'm sure you would have done the assignment on that. That also says the same thing. Propinquity or proximity, or when you interact more, it helps to bond well.
That's more like, when you work with your colleagues, you're like best of buddies, you go out with them and all that. And the moment you quit and you leave the job, they're out of sight, out of,
Out of sight, out of mind.
yeah. And then you
Yeah.
become with your new colleagues.
Yeah.
And then you stop
Yeah.
mingling with your old ones.
So the connectionist theory does not exactly limit itself to
Yeah,
the-
Vasudha, I didn't quite
Yeah.
understand the examples. Maybe I was distracted. Can you just repeat the example you took? What was that
Okay, then-
appointment and all? I didn't quite get
Okay,
that.
see, now, just a second, I'll have to. Okay, say these are the certain. Okay, these are certain aspects or certain aspects of communication between people. Okay. These circles that you see in red are different aspects. And these are all concepts that you're getting from your teacher. Now, say the teacher is linking, that is teaching you how to greet a person, then find out personal information about the person, and then she's connecting you, okay, to these informations. Okay, do you get it?
This one is facing the left.
Huh?
No, Vasudha,
Right?
what are these? These are concepts you're saying.
They're concepts. See, you know how to greet a person, but until unless you practice it or you are learning it. Suppose, say, again, Jean Piaget's theory, you're still a child, you're still learning. And the first thing you do, you try to talk to a person and they do not respond to you very well. Now the teacher comes into play and then teaches you how to greet someone, right? The blue thing.
Right.
And then she teaches you how to find personal information. Then she teaches you to use this greeting and personal information in order to make contact with the person. Now all these information are interconnected. That is your first class. Second, she takes up she asks you to ask them for more detailed stories of their life. Let us find out more information from their life. Okay. Now you're talking to the person. You ask them for more information. You ask them for more information, you're making a connection. Now this connection here in between these two circles, which are circled in green, it is getting stronger and stronger. After which, she asks you to combine the first step, that is greeting and finding out personal information. And then she tells you, go and make other appointment with this person, but because you're not able to get complete information. So this again, the yellow is combining with your red, blue, and green in order to form a stronger bond, right? Hello?
Right. So all this is happening inside your brain. So these
Inside
are all
your
the
brain.
different concepts. Yeah.
Concepts
So
that,
this
and you're
is
linking each of them together in order to form a new connections, and then
Correct.
each of these connections will help you understand better. Okay, you know what, I shall place a link of this particular explanation because it is very, very easy. Okay,
Can I
just-
give one small example?
sure.
I was just thinking, see, like your mom is teaching you how to cook, right?
Hmm.
Then she teaches you rice and dal. And
Hmm.
then she goes and teaches you sambar. She says, okay, first make dal and then you make sambar like this.
Hmm.
Then she teaches you dal tadka. She says, first you make dal and then you do this variations. And then she teaches you some other, maybe dal paratha. And she says, first you make dal and then you mix it with the wheat rice. So what you're doing over here is you're learning a number of things in cooking, but making the dal is getting more stronger and stronger in your mind. You
Exactly.
don't even have to refer your notes, the measurement, how much dal, how to wash
Yeah,
it.
eventually you're able to
Yeah,
do it with
you
your eyes
don't
closed.
even have to see the recipe because now you've done it so many times that you know it by heart. So that is a strong connection you've already made. All
Yes.
other connections are lighter connections. So if I say, when the lighter connections are made, if tomorrow my son likes only paratas, dal paratas, and he doesn't like sambars, then I'll make more dal paratas than sambars. Then what will happen? Then that connection will get stronger. And my sambar, if I have to make, means I have to go and refer notes as to how to make it. So that is what the whole thing is.
Excellent, excellent.
Wow.
Sunita, awesome. Anyways, again, to
So
add to what
it's just
Sunita says,
Just that, one second, just
Go
you
ahead, go ahead.
practice something very often and you remember it very well, is it?
Yes.
The more you
see,
utilize those
repetition,
schemas in your head,
Repetition. Okay, okay.
Can I say something?
repetition. See,
you
that is
don't
the
only-
first thing. One second. See,
Yeah,
the first concept that we learned is Vog and Norman's theory. What does it say? The more you repeat some information, the better you remember it. Now, based on this information, the rest of it came up. All these people developed on the point of retention, encoding, and all that in order to bring up their own theories. Whatever you do, whatever you say, it definitely comes back to the first model, that is the first behavioral model that you see, that is the Vog and Norman theory. I hope all of you are getting this, right? If otherwise, I'll come back with, I'll get back to you people with a better explanation.
Can I say something on this?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
We actually studied in our last unit about memory, okay? Short-term and long-term memory. So if we don't repeat, we cannot convert it into a long-term memory. So what the example which Sunita just gave about dal, what she is doing, she is repeating the basic process which is going into a long-term memory. And that's how she remembers later. She did not to check how it needs to be done. So she converted those short-term memory into long-term memory by using repetition. So in our last chapter, there's an importance of repetition. The more we repeat the same task, the more it get better, and the same thing works with our stimuli as well. So the more we practice something like our habits, daily habits, and sometimes it goes into our unconscious mind, and we do it without even thinking about it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's automatic,
you know,
automaticity or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, our worrying is something like that, when we worry about something, like if we have undergone some kind of issue, we keep on thinking about it and it stays fresh in our minds, right? So that schema gets stronger and stronger. You don't forget that information and it keeps troubling you. But as the years go by and you get engaged in other things, you don't have enough time to sit and think about that particular episodic memory, right? And that time what happens, the details of those memories starts fading, and what you are actually engaged in right now starts getting more stronger. So this is now the application of this thing is where in our lives, wherever we find we can actually choose what to keep in our head and choose how to get rid of things which are unpleasant to us. That is how you apply all these things into our day-to-day lives.
Right. I understand
And-
the concept of repetition. Yeah.
And also, I think taking things into the unconscious memory is a different concept altogether, over and above memory, I guess, because there are certain activities which are supposed to be done with unconscious memory. For example, there is a research that says that suppose a golfer who is actually making a golf shot, if he thinks and play the shot, most likely
See.
that he would not hit it right. So the
Praveen
activity has.
Praveen ji,
Yes.
again, this again is automaticity. What happens is at the first, you will have to consciously make an effort to calculate everything. But as you practice, all this
Correct.
goes into your subconscious, as you say, and it becomes a habit. Like you say, no, neend mein utھ ke bhi main kar sakta hu. That
Yeah.
kind. So it
And-
becomes a part of your subconscious.
And one more thing that I have read about this practicing and doing it is not only in your brain, actually things, even the nerves which are connected to the other limbs, right? For example, hand or leg or whatever it is, to give the signal. That nerves actually gets a white coating, it seems, as you practice. So basically what happens is the signals from the brain takes to those particular limbs with a very minimal response time, without any loss of signal. So that's
See,
how
Yeah, I think that is with reference to what Anju told us yesterday, na? Or वो क्या था वो Hobbes rule, wherein the more stimuli it gets, the more sensitive those neurons become.
Yeah.
Right. So with the least amount of stimuli, the next time things, it can grasp immediately.
Yeah, and even the response to your other limbs actually goes on pretty fast. There is a white matter which it's like a coating that happens on the nerves. It seems it's like a white coating.
That's too advanced. Praveen, tum prabhu ho.
Heads.
Vasudha, yeah. Hey,
Let's talk
Vasudha,
about hips.
can we just do a little, revision of what you just took? If you can take us from slide 1, because there are some concepts which are a repeat, some are. So if you can just briefly summarize each of them, that will just help to reinforce. We have about 5-7 minutes, right? So if you can do that. What, Vasudha? No audio. You'll only show us pictures, huh? Hello, Vasudha?
Sorry, I'm so sorry about that. My mic was on mute. Hello.
Yeah,
I thought you
yeah.
got upset with us, Vasudha.
Yeah, I thought
Not at
I
all,
would have done
not at
something.
all. Not at all. I am so sorry. Scooby was
Just a
barking.
one liner on each of them so that it just kind of, just reinforces. That's
Okay.
all.
So information processing is a source of learning, but unless it is organized, processed, and available to the right people in the right kind of format that is suitable for decision making, it is not helpful. And the first and the foremost of all your information processing models was the Vog and Norman model of primary and secondary theory, which was proposed in the year 1965. It was dualistic in nature, talking about the primary memory and the secondary memory. Now, the primary, it also stated that the old data that was there in your brain would decay or be replaced by new information, and also stated that the short-term memory was very limited in storage space. Okay, and in case the forgetting was a part of decay, then the information recalled was slower or lesser when the recitation of the experiment, the digits on the experiment was slower. If it was due to interference, then there was no change whatsoever. As we were just talking now, repetition. Yeah, stating that in case your information is repeated over and over again, it has moved from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. Next, we move on to the Atkinson and Shiffrin stage model. Here, the stimulus that you receive or the information that you receive is from the environment, which is moving to your sensory memory. Sensory memory, any unimportant information is forgotten and then moved on to the initial processing. During the initial processing, the information is repeated, rehearsed, and all that. And during the information processing, all the unimportant information again is left out. Only the important information has moved forward. The important information, once moving on to the short-term memory, is repeated and remembered. And this is moved to your long-term memory. If any information is not repeated in the short-term memory or rehearsed in the short-term memory, it is forgotten. Sorry. Any response that you give comes from the long-term memory to your short-term memory, from where you give your response. So when you have to recall, you have to rummage to through your long-term memory to find whatever information you want, which comes into your short-term memory and then goes on as your response.
So what did they add? So this was already Some tadka, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
so VOG, what is the improvisation they did over VOG in Norman? Did they do anything extra?
See, here they did not basically, they just expanded the entire thing and added sensory memory to it.
Okay.
With the information that comes here, you just go, it is directly going into your stimulus, sorry, into your primary memory. But with the Atkinson model, what they did is they processed the information and expanded that entire process. So they said that instead of going directly to your short-term memory, it is first received by your skin or your ears or your eyes or your tongue or whatever senses you have. They first take it in. Then from there, your initial processing is actually done, where all the unimportant information is left out.
Got it. So
Somewhere,
they
yeah.
added sensory memory to the whole model and they explained it further. Got it. Thank
Exactly.
you. Yeah, got it.
And
Okay,
again,
great.
encoding and elaboration makes the information stay for a longer period of time. All right. Next, we move on to the levels of recall. Just like the effect of queuing on recall the experiment that we did, here also the person, PI Zinchenko, wanted to find out as to how much interaction or what kind of interaction we have with our material. So we are studying and we read it once. How much we remember is what he wanted to see. And that is where he came up with those experiments. And it was found that any word with deeper meaning or deeper connections, I'm talking about both the points at one, deeper meaning and deeper connections, deeper meaning or deeper relationships were generally found to be more remembered. That is, they were more retained than any nonsense syllables or words with no connection. Then comes your Craig and Lockhart, who said your eyes, your ears, and your brains are the only the ways of processing it. And everybody stores information at different rates and understands at different rates. And whatever information that you have stored depends upon how you encode or process that information. Visual structure or visual or structural processing is one of the lowest forms. तू देखेगा भूल जाएगा, तू याद करेगा मतलब समझेगा तो तुझे याद रहेगा. This is what he meant. Okay, so they said that visual processing was mainly concerned with the structure and physical features. They used the word maintenance rehearsal, which is a type of information processing. Maintenance rehearsal again is the type, maintenance rehearsal is where the information that has been received is held in the memory without any elaboration. That means without encoding, without any meaning, it is there, because of which it is lost almost immediately. Again, when if you cover the list that I've given you, if any of you remember which all were the names that were there in capitals, okay, forget the capital letters. Can you name all the words that were with E? Covered, please kindly cover your that list. Okay, one minute, I'll do this. Okay. Can anybody tell me all the names that were beginning with the letter E?
Eclairs, enchiladas.
Okay, with T?
Tarts, toffee.
And?
There
Okay,
was
this
one.
person is actually written down. There are 3.
Okay, didn't notice.
Fine.
Toffee.
Toffee is already done. Anyways, so
Cream.
No, T.
Time.
हाँ, देख लिया. Okay.
देख लिया.
So basically and there was one word left out. Anybody remembers this?
Donuts.
Oh God, who is this? Sunita, you?
Sunita has mastered the level of recall. So don't,
She's
don't add her into this
excellence.
recall examination.
Yeah.
She's out of league.
Yeah, mine's only short-term
Excellent
memory.
recall she has.
Okay.
Only short-term memory. Long-term memory is damaged by drugs.
Okay, moving on. It was nice. Good. Complete it, Vasudha, then we can laugh.
I mean medicines. I just want clarification. I mean medicines, okay?
Okay, Sunita. All right. So, see, because Sunita was so very good at short-term memory, she was able to give us all the names. But generally, Sunita excluded, you can not remember those names perfectly after a little bit of time. And I use words that you can actually remember because you'll start encoding as soon as you saw this. Those are wrong. So the minute you do not encode it and only focus on the physical aspect, you generally tend to lose this information pretty quickly, which leads to a fragile memory trace. Memory trace, again, is almost like a route map to your house. So, considering your memory as a house or the house which you are living in, the path taken to your house is your memory trace, or the path taken to your memory is your memory trace. Generally, this leads to a fairly short term retention, which means, as I said, forgotten immediately. Next comes your auditory and phonemic processing, which is considered with appearance and sound, which is an intermediate level of processing. And it has a higher recall rate compared to that of visual processing. Because you're listening to it, a little bit of information does get encoded into your brain, due to which you tend to remember it for a little longer than your visual processing. Okay, appearance, again, appearance and sound. The reason I'm using appearance is when you listen to a sound, you generally put a picture to that sound. So if you're if you hear the sound dug, 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 dug outside on the road, then you'll obviously think of a Royal Enfield Bullet. Or if you hear a dog barking, you'll put a dog's face to that sound. So generally, both of them go together when sound comes into picture. That is why your rate of recall is a little better. Next comes your semantic processing, which is related to language and meaning. Because you're remembering the meaning, it is easier to remember. In school, remember when teachers used to tell us, try to understand, do not mug up. Mugging up is basically visual type of a processing. Semantic processing is your understanding and learning. So the minute you understand something, you tend to remember it better. And this uses a word called elaborative rehearsal. Elaborative rehearsal is a process of is a encoding strategy that is used to facilitate the formation of new memory. And this new memory is formed how? By linking whatever information that you have just received to the information that you already have. Now, this causes a more meaningful analysis of the information that you've received, which leads to a more durable memory trace and a higher rate of recall. Self-reference effect, how does this relate to me? When the minute you ask, how does this relate to me? Or think that this particular item or this particular characteristic, this particular trait, whatever is happening around you, this particular stimuli is related to me, then that is called your self-reference effect. Okay. Again, it was done by Roger, Kalper, and Kirker, which was proposed in the year 1977. And this process, it says that this process of relating information to oneself is the self-reference effect. This encourages a deeper processing and causes one to retain more information. Okay. Now again, Jean Piaget comes up with the word called schema, which means every piece of information that is present in your brain. It also includes all the information that you have learned, experienced, or witnessed. Now, schema, again, is a framework with the help of which we take in new information and try to understand it. Okay, it helps organize our thought. It influences the way we pay attention to information. It also impacts how quickly we learn. It also helps simplify the world around us. It allows us to think more quickly. It can also change how we interpret into information that we are receiving. And most of all, schema is remarkably difficult to change. You can change it, but it is very, very difficult. It is an intrinsic process. It is an exhaustive process. Unfortunately, it also influences the stereotypes and the prejudices that we tend to have. We, in the sense, all of us at some point of time or the other, we have some type of stereotype that is blocking our information flow. And self schema is the belief and idea about ourselves that has been modified by our own life experiences, and it is reflected in our values and interests. Now, self schema generally motivates us to be a better person than we currently are. But this is the positive self schema. In case someone has a negative self schema, they do not want to change themselves and they think of them as the top, the king of the world or the queen of the world. It helps in organizing the internal attributes such as I, me, and myself. Whatever, see, because of this I, me, myself, generally, if it is used in a proper way, you tend to remember information in a better way. But if it is going in a negative direction, it is also known as a narcissistic trait. The connectionist theory is again how Sunita says, you're trying to, you learn how to cook rice and dal and sambar and all that over a period of time. But dal is something that is common, and rice and dal are something common for almost all kinds of Indian dishes. Almost all. Now you keep repeating this every time you cook. And every time you cook, you're already forming a connection in that particular direction, because of which that connection is thickened or strengthened, due to which you tend to remember it almost in an autonomic way. Automatic way. That means it almost becomes a part of you. It becomes your, what do you call it? Your second nature and your habit and all that. And that is what your connectionist theory says. Again, connectionist theory also says that you can parallel process. That is, at the same time, multiple processes happen in order to give you that information that you've received from the stimuli. That is, whatever information you're receiving from the stimuli, सब खिचड़ी होके आ रहा है, उसको सब दूध का दूध, पानी का पानी बना के, it is giving it to you in a clearer way. Again, the three principles are representation of information is distributed, memory and knowledge for a specific item or a thing is not stored explicitly. It is in the connections between the units. Learning can occur with gradual change in the connection strength by experience. That is, experiences can help you learn better. Okay, the PDP is a cognitive theory that concerns itself with connecting nodes and pathways within the brain. Again, knowing that platypus is a bird and a mammal is a new information. And this is connecting mammals and brains. Sorry, mammals and birds. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that is how it is. I hope everybody got it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you actually took us through the whole lesson again. I was just saying a very short summary, but thanks a lot. Really nice. Helped a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
All
a
right.
lot. Yeah.
So I'll stop this sharing. Anyone has any more questions?
Yeah, truly, I also came to know that platypus is categorized under bird.
Yes, it is actually. Even I didn't know till recently.
Nice. Superb. Lovely class. Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I think
Thank
after
you.
the course, we can open a tutorial service and, for all MA psychology
Okay,
students.
before all that, please